Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of worth. Now, please understand that there are artists on both sides of the footlights, and I am very, very excited to introduce today's very special guest, and that's Charlotte St. Martin, president of the Broadway League. Good afternoon, Charlotte. How are you today?
I'm great, Richard. How are you on this Thanksgiving
Well,
weekend?
I'm doing great, but I'm going to ask the questions today. I want to ask you, how are you doing really in the midst of this crazy world that we find ourselves in?
Well, I think one of the advantages that I have is that I have such long, busy days that I don't have time to think about what's really going on and get depressed or lonely. I mean, I fall into bed at night. So I'm doing fine, actually. I mean, I hurt for all of the people that are out of work and have lost health insurance. But I know we're doing everything we can to
I
make
know you
it
are.
better. So that helps with my hurt.
Well, I want to ask you, since you bring this up, what is a typical day like for you? Or is there any such thing as a typical day?
Well, there's really almost never a typical day, but certainly during this time, we have 42 task forces that are meeting and addressing various facets of what it's going to take to get us back open. And so I attend not all of those task force meetings because many take place at the same time, but most of them. And then there's this little thing called the Tonys that's also we're working on and talking about, and then the
Mhm.
Jimmys next year. So it's all almost about COVID and getting back up.
Okay, well, today marks 262 days since our theaters shut down. And I just want to know what your calendar looked like on March 11th, prior to all of this happening. And if you can take us back to that time and as the events were unfolding, in which the theaters had to make the decision and you helped make those decisions that we are now living with.
Yes, well, we were beginning on March 11th to hear of cast members and crew members being exposed and getting sick.
Mhm.
So we knew that it was very possible that this could happen. We certainly didn't know then how long we would be out. I mean, we were
Mhm.
optimistic and thinking a couple of months. And of course, a couple of months has turned into what looks like at least a year and 3 months. But
Mhm.
it was right in the heart of Tony Awards time. We had 18 more shows to open in the next 45 days and lots of planning. So the president of the American Theater Wing and I spend 30 to 40% of our time on an annual basis together. But during this time, it's even more than that because Broadway is not a cookie cutter business. It is handmade, and handmade requires lots of hands on.
Now, I know that it was about a month or so ago, if I'm not mistaken, that a date was announced as a possible opening date for the theaters. And of course, since that time, there is the possibility, God willing, and God help us all, that 3 vaccines are on the way. Do you anticipate that those dates will remain as they are? Or do you see anything that would change that? And of course, this is all speculation right now.
Yes, I wish I had a crystal ball, Richard. I
So
do
do I.
not. It would be very valuable at this time. But I think when we made the announcement that we would refund and exchange tickets through May 30th, it was clear that the scientific and medical profession didn't have a time where they said this is absolute. Y'all can come back up. So we looked at how much time it would take to get back up. And even if the spring is a time when they loosen up the vaccine and people start getting the vaccine, for most shows, it will take 2 to 4 months of getting back together, getting people back here from all over the world. Then it's basically starting over with rehearsals. Certainly, the longer running shows won't have to rehearse too much, maybe 2 months, not 4 months. But our producers are saying it's anywhere from 2 to 4 months to get open. So, with a spring vaccine for the theater going public,
Mhm.
we felt that perhaps the summer could open up for some of the longer running shows that won't need quite as much time to rehearse and get tech done all again. So we're cautiously optimistic that we will have some of Broadway up and running in the summer, and hopefully everybody up and running in the fall.
Let's hope so. Now, I want to let everyone know who's watching. If you have any questions that you would like to ask, please post them in the comment section, and I will try to get to them as much as possible. But as I said at the top of the show, this show is all about celebrating. And I want to celebrate you, Charlotte. Now, I heard a y'all in your conversation there. So I want to know where you're from originally, because I don't know a lot about your background. I do know that you've been with the League since 2006, but I want to talk about the road that led there, because you have an extensive, incredible background. Where were you born?
I was born in West Texas and moved to Dallas when I was about 11 and lived there until 25 years ago, at which time I was promoted and I moved to New York to be head of operations and marketing at the time for Loews Hotels. I had been with Loews for some time at that point, and I was with them for 11 additional years, living in New York when the search company reached out to talk about the Broadway League. And I'd been traveling 75% of the time for 25 years in my role. And one day I woke up and I said, stick a fork in me. I'm done. I cannot get on an airplane every week, and some weeks 2 or 3 times. And Lowe's was kind enough to understand, but that's what life was like for me until I went to the Broadway League, which is now mostly travel for fun and long days and long weeks. But when I do get to travel, it's to go hiking in Italy or France or someplace gorgeous.
Oh, that sounds great. Now, I want to ask you, I mean, you began in the service industry. Do you have any background as an actress or an entertainer, performer?
No, I never wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be in the audience. I fell in love with musical theater when I was in high school. My boyfriend was playing The King and I. He was playing the king in The King and I.
Okay.
And I fell in love with musical theater and then continued to develop my love of theater overall. So, no, my role is in the audience, and now to hopefully help all of those people who make the magic called Broadway.
Well, you certainly do. And I want to go back to, believe it or not, the 5-year-old Charlotte. What was your life like growing up? At that time, I think you were in Dallas, or were you still in East Texas?
Actually, it's West Texas,
Oh, West
and
Texas. I'm
at
sorry.
5, I was still in West Texas in a little town called San Angelo, Texas, and I was a cheerleader. You know, in Texas, all young women are a cheerleader or something related to that if they're lucky, and all young men, if they're lucky, play sports and mostly
Mhm.
football because that is Texas. Friday Night Lights is not a vision of somebody's fantasy. It is real. Friday night, everybody is sitting in their stadiums watching football that they all love.
Well, what were your aspirations? What were your goals? Did you want to, I mean, what brought you into the service industry? Was that a path that you actively pursued, or did these things happen by circumstance?
I would say mostly circumstance. I started working when I was 12. I
Mhm.
looked older than I was, and I sold popcorn in a movie theater, and then I became the cashier. And then I did a little modeling when I was a teenager, but then I went to work for Six Flags Over Texas and
Mm.
was in investor relations, public relations. And I thought I was going to be, they call them carnies, a carny that would work for
Well, believe it or not, I
the
was a
amusement
carny.
parks. So you understand.
I know. I worked at Grand Strand Amusement Park in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm a Southern
Well,
boy myself.
well, I loved it, and it just suited me. And one of my first jobs out of college was to work in the hospitality industry, and I looked at it as a potential career, and it ended up being an over 30 years career because I just love serving people. And during that time, I was on the board of many associations. I've been on the board of, an officer of, or chair of since I was 22 because
Mhm.
I believe that the sum total is better than the parts. And it takes a lot of people working together to make really big things happen. And that's what makes the Broadway League a perfect role for me.
And how did you make the transition to the Broadway League?
Well, the Broadway League is the trade association
Mhm. Mhm.
representing the business of Broadway. And I was used to running things. I used to run a magnificent hotel in Dallas called the Loews Anatole Hotel, then had 2,000 employees and 250,000 square feet of meeting space. And I'm a businesswoman, and the Broadway League is a business organization made up of
And a lot
artists,
of
which
people may not realize that. So I'm
that's
glad that you're
correct.
bringing that up. Absolutely.
Well, and people often ask, what qualified you to go from the hotel business, a hospitality business,
Mhm.
to Broadway, and most people don't think of Broadway, but it's a hospitality business.
Mhm.
And there is this thing called perishable inventory, and every room that you didn't sell last night is gone forever. And every show you didn't sell last night, every seat is gone forever. So there was a natural understanding from my previous role. And one of the things that I understood very clearly from the hospitality business was revenue management. And
Mhm.
at the time that I went to the league, people were not really using revenue management in a way that maximized the opportunity. Disney was certainly doing it because they had hotels and theme
Mhm.
parks and they understood it. But people don't really realize that most of the people who make Broadway, the producers, the presenters, really, they're small businesses that look big because of the impact they
Mhm.
have in the various communities. So it was fun. It was great for me. I didn't come in with preconceived ideas, except that I thought the job would be a lot easier than it turned out to be. I
Mhm.
thought, okay, there are four kinds of members. I will learn what each one of those types of member needs and then go about fulfilling it. Well, there is no such thing as a round peg for a round hole in Broadway because producers are also theater owners, and theater owners also produce and present. And they all are like this, they interchange in so many ways, which made that job a lot harder than I thought, but
Mhm.
also more interesting, actually. I mean, when I was with Lowe's, we had 7,000 employees and a lot of very, very uh, heavy emphasis on service and on all of the assets of the hospitality industry, which entertainment is one, and Broadway is certainly,
Mhm.
I think, the most important part of entertainment in this world.
Now, you came to Broadway, to the league in 2006, if I remember correctly. And when you came in, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced when you first began with the league? And this will take us to where we are today with everything. But prior to this pandemic, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you've had to deal with?
Well, certainly the league was formed, I think, 88 years ago now. for two primary reasons. One, to develop a multi-employer bargaining unit to negotiate all the union contracts on behalf of the industry. There are now 17 union contracts with 14 unions. And the other reason the league was formed was to fight fraudulent ticket brokers. And guess what? Those are still two of the most important things
That's
that
amazing.
we do.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's, but we've certainly grown, and we've grown dramatically. The costs have grown dramatically. The league is a small business in the sense that of our budget, but we have a big impact in the things that we do, whether it be the union negotiations, the Tony Awards, and all of the other aspects. Research, we do all of the research for commercial theater, not only in New York, but across the country. So it's, you know, it's an important organization that has obstacles from time to time. And we were about to go into the largest union negotiation in history in 2007. And we had expected major changes in the contract because while Broadway's attendance was strong, more and more producers were losing money. At best today, 1 out of 4 producers recoups on their investment. And in 2006, you were lucky if it was 1 out of 5. So we had to find ways to either cut costs or find more revenue. So the big obstacles were finding ways to work more closely with our union partners to make Broadway a little more profitable. We all know that Broadway is a huge economic generator to the city of New York.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, we are responsible for 97,000 jobs. We had an economic impact of almost 15 billion, 14.8 to be exact. And yet we were struggling as an industry. And so we embarked upon the Local One negotiation with a lot of passion and a lot of planning. So that was certainly an obstacle. And the league itself was not in great financial shape because we've gone through several significant recessions. And oh, by the way, we're about to go through another one. The 2007-8 recession came into my first year at the Broadway League. So there were many obstacles. There always are. Business presents itself with many obstacles. But we had an organization that was ready for change and ready to look forward in both cutting costs, but also creating additional revenue. And with my history in marketing and revenue management, we were able to create a number of new programs that enhanced our audience.
And can you go over some of those programs?
Certainly. Viva Broadway is one I'm very proud of. We formed that in 2009 with the goal of attracting more and more Latino, Latinx theater goers to Broadway. And since that time, the Latino audience has grown by over 60%. And that was the goal for that. It was, I mean, Broadway is not brain surgery, but you do have to take all the parts apart and look at how you can create more revenue, more attendance, and more programs that do that. We also started doing a number of things to bring in a younger audience. And fortunately, I'm knocking on wood now, in our last full season, 25% of our audience was under the age of 25. And 3 million of that audience were under the age of 18. So very slowly, but definitely every year, the average age of the Broadway attendee is younger, which we needed it to be because we have to build for the future. And we've done many other programs to diversify our audience and our workforce, which that will in itself create a greater audience. We also work very closely with NYC & Co., the marketing arm for New York City. I've been on their executive committee since 1990, and they do an amazing job of promoting tourism. But when I got to the league, the number of tourists was like 35 million tourists in the city. And before this pandemic, they were like 65 to 68 million, depending on when you take measure of that attendance. So it's, it's important that you don't stay too stuck in tradition, and Broadway is a tradition
Yes,
business.
yes, of course.
And that's terrific. And we needed to open up the audience and get more people that had not been to Broadway to a Broadway show. So those are clearly some of the obstacles. And out of all obstacles come opportunity if you take advantage of it. Step back, look, listen, look, and then act with what you learned.
Now, again, you don't have a crystal ball, and again, this is speculation, and you're talking about audience development and growth and everything. How do you anticipate the tourist industry coming back to New York? Do you think that this is going to take, a long process? How soon after the theaters start to open do you think that we'll start to build audiences? And how do theaters open if those audiences are not in place when we're ready to return?
Well, certainly NYC&Co put out a report, I think it was last week or certainly the week before, about what it will take to bring the tourists back to New York City. And the estimates to getting back to where we were are first, second quarter of 2025. But that's not, that's not 35 million to 65 million in 14 years. It's each quarter you continue to grow. And I think tourism is very much like Broadway. If people that just have to travel and they don't get sick, they tell their friends. Well, it's word of mouth is still the number one reason why people choose a show to go to Broadway. So we do believe that as the tourists come back, they will go to Broadway. And some that are more skeptical than others may hold until they hear very strong word of mouth that Broadway is not creating havoc with the darn pandemic. So I guess I would say we anticipate that audiences will definitely be down, especially the international travelers. About 20% of our last season was made up of international travelers. And we know they'll be the last to come back. So what we're hoping that we've seen through major recessions or major times when the dollar was very strong, we lost a lot of international visitors. But one of the great things that happened is a lot of domestic tourists still came to New York. So perhaps they were planning on a trip to Paris or Switzerland or South America, and they come to New York or San Francisco instead. So we're hoping that the domestic travelers will come back. That's what's happened in virtually every recession or major catastrophe. They come back first. And yet this is unlike anything any of us alive today have truly ever experienced. So we have no way of knowing. It's one of the reasons that 5 of our task forces are dealing with governmental and elected officials to try to get some relief, because what we hope with Save Our Stages, which is the bill that we just had a press conference with Senator Schumer about a month ago, this bill is geared to helping get us open with grants that would take care of capital expenditures if needed because of COVID, help us.
Now, excuse me for interrupting. I know that the Broadway League is not just Broadway, New York, it's across the country. Is this bill focused on New York primarily right now, or is it focused on the overall picture of theater from coast to coast?
It's actually focused on the whole country and not just theater, live entertainment. And the real focus of it is to get those people back to work that have been out the longest and that have lost the most money, and it's not a profit nonprofit thing. It is if you've lost 70% or more of your revenue, and Broadway falls into the 100% range, then this bill is to help get you back open and take care of the things that will get you back open, whether it's capital expenditures or additional rehearsals that, you know, the budget did not allow for, because all of those shows have already done their rehearsals and their tech and all of that. And then part of what we're asking for that the bill would do for everyone that receives these grants is to keep us open while we're building audiences, and to have, certainly in New York, those 97,000 jobs, getting them back to work as we can. And then, like, if you're an actor and you had 6 months of work during this opening period, your health insurance would come back. If you work in one of the businesses that, the small businesses that need revenue from Broadway shows, then it helps get them open and back to work and paying taxes and doing all of the things that makes New York the great city that it is. So it is for live entertainment of all kinds.
Now, of course, this is a business that is very driven by audience attendance, and we see the list on Broadway revenue and how much the theaters are making and everything. And of course, it's going to be a slow process coming back. We're all aware of that. Are there any guidelines or precautions currently in place to keep those shows afloat until we start to see that attendance grow?
Well, no, unless you're a nonprofit theater, which our members are mostly commercial. You've not gotten any grants or donations. One of the great things about The Road, our members in the 200 cities that present Broadway, one of the things that they have is they have a subscription base, and the subscriptions are still fairly strong. But what is so frightening is when you look at the members that run, for example, performing arts centers, and the Broadway series is part of what they do, is that series is a profitable venture for most centers, which allows them to do all of the educational programs and the other forms of entertainment that may not be profitable. So Broadway's being strong keeps entertainment strong. You know, whether some of these centers present symphony and ballet and opera, for many of them, they don't make money on those, but the Broadway series, the surplus from it helps to fund those things. So it's another reason why we need to get back open, because so much is dependent on our being out there and being full, keeping our theaters full, and creating the jobs that all depend upon Broadway.
Now, I want to get back to you for a moment. As I said before, you came into the league in 2006. How long were you with the league before you became president? And what other positions did you serve prior to that?
At the league, I came in as executive director, which is basically the top job in the league. But we had many great successes both inside the industry and outside the industry. And I don't really remember what year they gave me the title of president. My job didn't change. It was a sign of accomplishment, I think. And I'll never forget, because we'd never had an executive session in our executive committee. And they asked for an executive session. And I thought, oh my God, I thought I was doing really well. They seemed to be happy. And the purpose of it was to promote me to the title of president. But the job's been the same. I came in as the leader of the league and am still that.
And I don't want to get political, but I'm going to, and if there's anything that you are not comfortable talking about, we will skip over this. But what kind of support are you currently getting from the mayor and the governor here in New York? And of course, we've got a new president coming in. Have you reached out to Biden yet about our needs here in New York?
We have not. We have been working with the House and the Senate. Obviously, Senator Schumer and Senator Blunt from Missouri, and Senator Cornyn from Texas, and Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota. They are the four co-signers of the Save Our Stages bill. And we started reaching out day 3, I think, after the shutdown. And we have a very active governmental membership. And we created a thing called the Legislative Council, which is made up of members from every state where we have a Broadway presenter and a member. And so we've been working with the federal government for how many days did you say we've been closed? 266? I would say
262 today.
All right, then we've probably been reaching out to them since 259 days.
Good for you. That's great.
And we did not initially reach out to the governor beyond the day that we were being shut down. We worked very closely with the governor. He's very, very supportive of Broadway. But we felt that while people were dying and the spike was growing so dramatically, that it didn't make sense for us to make a loud cry about our needing to get Broadway back up. We respected the time. We didn't want to come off as tone deaf, but we did reach out to talk about the scientific and medical things that would need to happen for us to get back. And the governor did actually put us in touch with the scientists and some of the top medical professionals in the state. And we hired an infectious disease specialist who is working with them. We figured if the governor's going to shut us down and bring us back up, we need to be working in tandem with the state to ensure that we're looking at the things that the state is looking at. So yes, we're working very closely with the state. We have not been working that closely with the city, though we did recently meet with the mayor. He's had his hands full. So, and he was very cooperative and to talk with us about what we may need when it's time to come back. Look, we're not stupid. We recognize that the city and the state is basically bankrupt in the sense that I think the state has a $60 billion budget shortfall and the city has I think it's $16 billion shortfall. So we're not anticipating that either of them will give us financial grants or cash. They never have. And my instinct is they probably won't, but we can work with them. The I Love New York campaign in the 80s was one of the most successful generators of tourism in the history of New York and Broadway. And we hope to be working with the Empire State Development Corporation, which oversaw that, had a lot of Broadway in it. I'm sure that's why it brought us back so quickly. But we will, I think, as the things that are life-threatening and that are keeping people from working and from being at home, it doesn't make sense for us to push beyond the things that need to be done, for example, to help us. Like recently, we sent out on behalf of the governor and Michael Bloomberg a notice about COVID Alert NY, which is a contact tracing system. And we sent that out to all of our members and asked them to send it out to the cast so that we could help put a finger on those people that have gotten COVID and to help them reach out to the people that have been in contact with. And we will continue to do whatever the city and the state need us to do to get us all back to work.
Now, most of us, myself included, have had to embrace this medium of social media in terms of keeping ourselves relevant and out there. How has the Broadway League um, adopted or adapted to this medium of the internet in terms of keeping all of your work out amongst our community?
Well, actually, I think one of the silver linings of this pandemic is we've learned Zoom and we've learned the benefits of actually seeing people if you can't see them in person. And
Right.
as I mentioned, we've got members in over 200 cities in this country and their staff, and we have conference calls with them, except for the times when they're in the city. So this has really brought our road presenters closer to New York and vice
Hmm.
versa. It's taken us out to them. So that's certainly been very, very positive. We have, of those 42 task forces, 9 of them are marketing driven. And a great deal of the planning that we're doing to return is in the social media time. I mean, there's no way we can do a $50 million ad campaign. So
No, of course not.
fortunately, this medium, social, all of the social platforms will help us let people know that Broadway's open when we are and share that excitement. And, you know, people said, I just think Broadway's doing such a great job of being out there and keeping in touch with our fans. Well, you are close enough to the industry, our cast and crew, they have to do it. It's
Hmm.
part of the fabric of who they are. And
Hmm.
I've been so proud of the community for all that they're doing through social media, whether it's raising money through events via Zoom, virtual galas. I attended the Actors Fund virtual gala a couple of weeks ago. It's kind of strange to be, quote, sitting at a table of a virtual gala, but I know it raised a
Did
lot
you
of
dress
money.
in your best finery for the gala?
I actually did. I put on
Good
a
for you.
sequined jacket and I was dressed all the way past my waist.
That's more than you can say for most.
Lots of jewelry, sequined jacket,
I
and
love it.
sweatpants and flip flops on the bottom half. It was fun. It was
Oh,
fun.
that's great. But you also serve on the board with the Actors Fund, am I correct?
I do.
Yes, and Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So thanks
Correct.
for all that you do with that. I want to ask you if you are able to share with us any information that you have about what's happening right now as far as the Tony Awards are concerned. There are a lot of questions that people have about how you will proceed, or do you have those answers right now?
But what I can tell you, I don't do interviews about the Tony Awards
Okay, that's
without my partner Heather Hitchens.
okay.
But what we are doing is working with CBS and our normal television partners, the White Cherry Productions, who actually produce the broadcast. And with the amount of work that has to be done, we realized that once we did the nominations, that it made no sense to rush up the ceremony because of the holidays.
Mhm.
And um, we're learning a new medium of how to do a Broadway show or the Tony Awards. So we're taking our time and we have a limited budget, so we're trying to do everything we can to keep
Mhm.
the best of the Tony Awards um, and keep the brand as strong and as high quality as it is without all of the things that normally enable us to do that. So we're hoping to be able to announce the date of the 2020 Tonys in the next month.
Mhm. Now, with the change that's going on, will there be a time, hopefully sooner rather than later, when everything will get back on track and on schedule, whatever that may be? Um, will the Tonys remain in June moving forward after uh, the situation that you're talking about now?
Well, that I need a crystal ball for too. But certainly that would be the intent.
Mm.
CBS likes us in that time period, and our seasons are set up to complement that time period. So depending on, if the COVID pandemic should last longer than, say, next year, then we have no idea. I mean, ideally, at some point, maybe 2022, we'll be in a position to have the Tonys broadcast on CBS in the first or second week of June at Radio City Music Hall. That's our goal.
Mhm.
We will have our 75th Tony Awards, most likely in 2022. And so we're hoping that we still get to do that.
Now that's the 75th anniversary, the diamond anniversary. So make sure you've got diamond encrusted sweatpants in case that doesn't happen. But I want to ask you, with everything that we have been going through since March, and obviously none of us are happy about where we are, but what aspects of this time in our lives have you been able to embrace the most?
Oh goodness. I think it's the task forces and the working with the members. I mean, we already had a very involved
Mhm.
membership. We have 10 standing committees, plus task forces, plus conference committees. But it was pretty standard and dealing with the business of Broadway on a normal level.
Mhm.
These task forces, these 42 task forces, have brought people into leadership roles, and I'm working very closely with them. And another silver lining of this pandemic is more and more people are learning more of what the Broadway League does.
Mhm.
Even leadership. Usually when people get involved with a trade association, and I was involved with many throughout my career, you go in for one or two reasons. If you're a league member, you either want to work on education, or you want to work on governmental affairs, or you want to work in labor to change work rules. But most people don't know everything else the league does.
Well, let me ask you, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about the league?
Well, I know the biggest misconception is that people think we can dictate and mandate. And I've had many a member that actually thought I could say, okay, we are going to open July 1, and you will have to do this, this, and this. And that is the exact opposite of a
Mhm.
trade association. There are individual members, not corporate members. And those members, we try persuading, navigating shark-filled waters, communicating. And unless it's something that the board mandates as a criteria for membership, there's not much that we can mandate.
Mhm.
The Tony Awards itself has the management committee and the admin committee, and they may mandate criteria. They do mandate criteria for awards and the date of the Tonys and what the Tonys are going to look like. Our union contracts are mandated, but that's about it.
Mhm.
Everything else we do is because people want to do it or are persuaded to do it.
Mhm.
For example, because I fell in love with Broadway in high school and saw the impact it had on my life very soon into my career, maybe even before 2006 was done. Um, I, I came up with an idea through talking with a woman by the name of Barbara Janowitz, who had been head of government relations for us, and Tori Bailey, head of the Theater Development Fund, a program that we wanted to bring all high school students in the New York City school system to see a Broadway show for
Mhm.
$10. It took me 10 years, 12 years to get that done because it's expensive. It
Mhm.
requires a lot of $10 tickets for these producers that aren't making money,
Mhm.
but it's an investment in our future. And
Absolutely.
so we started Broadway Bridges 3 years ago. And so far, we've taken 40,000 students from the New York City school system to see a Broadway show. And
Not sure for
we're
that.
introduced, yes. And the goal is to get to 70,000 a year. And we were on our way. We lost the last 7,000 for this season when we shut down because they were still scheduled to go. Well, that's going to change and impact the diversity of our audience
Mhm.
and the age of our audience and the diversity of our workforce and the age of our workforce. So one of the things that we do through this program is introduce students to the careers, the non-performance careers on Broadway. And we created a website called Careers on Broadway, in which, we outline 80 different jobs and what the skill set is and how you can learn more about it and all of that. So that's a major, major program, and one that I would venture to say more than 50% of our members even really realized we were
Does this
doing
program
it.
reach beyond New York as well, with all the theaters across the country?
Well, we're working on an adaptation because in order to do that, you need a, uh, a large number of theaters.
Mhm.
So, because if you're going to take all of this, like 70,000 kids, that's 2 weeks of theaters being completely full of kids in New York City. Well, it's certainly not 70,000 high school students in Chicago, but I bet there's 40,000. Well,
Mhm.
I mean, Chicago, San Francisco, probably two cities that do something similar, but we
Dallas?
are working. Yeah, we are working with our road members on adapting it in some way, as we did with Kids Night on Broadway, where
Mm.
you know we've had now. I think it's the 23rd year of Kids Night on Broadway, and it started where you buy a full price ticket for an adult and you get a kid in for free, and again on that night, almost all of the theaters have kids in the audience. But we can't do that
Mhm.
um, for one night in the rest of the cities. But 27 cities had a kids' night on Broadway evening in our marketplace in the last full season. They also have to have the right shows for kids, right?
Mhm.
Because not all shows uh, would be acceptable to the departments of
Mhm.
education around the country. So, one of the great things that has happened since I've been here, I can't take credit for it, but it has happened during my watch, is how many more shows that we have that are playing that are uh, right for kids of all ages, right? And I mean, Disney's coming in 1995 certainly started that with
Mhm.
Beauty and the Beast and then Lion King and the many shows they've done. But then many other shows have come along. I mean, right now we had Beetlejuice, we had Mean Girls, we have Wicked, we have Hamilton. We have so many shows that are geared to um, are acceptable to a younger audience.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's one of the reasons why in our last full season, 94% of the seats in our theaters were full for the entire year.
I
Because
absolutely love that. Thank you. Arts and education is something that I'm very passionate about. And when you were growing up in Texas, were you exposed to the arts in school?
my high school had a strong musical theater program. And so I was exposed by dating the young man that played the king in The King and I.
You
But there
dated
was
a king.
Yes, I did, and he was a very good king. He went on to perform. I don't know if he ever played Broadway. He did a lot of regional theater, but
Mhm.
arts education was not something that was offered then. I think the country ended up doing more, and then as budgets got tougher, most arts education programs have been eliminated throughout the country. And that's one of the things I'm so proud of our members for because uh, the last full season, we served over 25 million kids,
Mhm.
some form of arts education. And we hope to continue to grow that. I mean, with with certainly with Broadway Bridges, we will do more and more and more in New York City. But you know, our member in Tampa, Judy Lisi, with the Straz Performing Arts Center, serves 60,000 kids a year in some form of arts education. And that happens in many of our larger performing arts centers around the country that have other forms of programming and the resources to do this arts education. I think we do several key things with the DOE in New York City, but we should do more. Certainly, Broadway Bridges is major. We also have a high school shadowing day and week that introduces careers and gives them actual experience and knowledge about those careers. And we do Broadway speakers bureaus with a lot of the colleges and high schools around the country to talk about non-performance careers on Broadway. But we need to do more, and it's just a matter of resources. You know, if I had more resources, I'd be doing more programs, because it's great for the kids to get that education. It's great for Broadway and the performing arts around the world to introduce these kids to arts. And we know they'll do better in college. We know they'll have a happier life, more fulfilling, and that they will shore up the business of live entertainment around the world if we do that.
Now, is there a way that our viewers or the people that will hear this later on podcast can get involved with the Broadway League?
Not really. I mean, it is a member organization. They certainly get involved by watching the Tonys or the Jimmy Awards, and that's a newer thing that we've done that we're very, very proud of. We took on the Jimmy Awards in 2000. I think we've done it 7 years, and I think it's 11 or 12 years old. But the last Jimmy Awards had 140,000 kids from 43 regions, 1,700 high schools compete to send a young man and a young woman from a region to New York to be trained by Broadway professionals and to perform live on a Broadway stage. And we got 20 scholarships, and it's a remarkable evening. The first, when Jimmy Niederlander actually started this program with Van Kaplan from Pittsburgh CLO, and the first one, when they came to the league and said, "Can you buy a sponsorship?" And we did. And I thought, well, I'll go. I'm sure this is going to be a sweet little program. Well, they blew me away. You've never seen so much talent. I mean, 2 years ago, the winners, both the young man and the young woman, went straight to a Broadway show. One became the lead in Dear Evan Hansen, and the other a lead in Mean Girls. And she's still performing. Mr. Feldman, the young man, is in college now, but you'll see him back on Broadway.
Absolutely.
Eva Noblezado didn't even win. She was a finalist about 7 years ago, was hired from that night to be the lead in Miss Saigon in London, won an Olivier. Then oh gosh, what was it? Well, I guess it came to New York. She was actually the lead here and received a Tony nomination, and I think she was 20. And now she's a lead in Hadestown and received another Tony nomination, and she might be all of 22 or 23 now. So there's real talent there, and that's pretty darn exciting.
Well, Charlotte, I want to ask you before we wrap up, and we're almost at the end of our show, what is on your bucket list with all your accomplishments? What's ahead that you really hope that you will be able to accomplish before you decide to move on beyond the Broadway League?
Well, I want to see Broadway Bridges serving 70,000 high school kids every year. I want to see the Jimmy Awards broadcast like the Tony Awards is broadcast. And I want to see an even stronger legislative council where It is just a matter of usual business that our members speak with their mayors, their elected officials from their city, state, and federal. And if I can do that, then I will consider myself having accomplished my goals.
Well, you've done a wonderful job thus far, and thank you. Before we end the show, I want to thank, first of all, Charlotte St. Martin for joining us today on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in New York. She could be anywhere, and she's here with us. So thank you for that. I want to thank all of you who tuned in today. If you enjoyed the show, and I hope you did, please go to my website if you haven't done so already and sign my guest book, richardskipper.com, with your thoughts about the show that helps to boost me in other markets. I also want to let you know that tomorrow afternoon, as part of I've got my hand in so many pots, the Full Moon Positive Book Club, I'm going to be interviewing Dana P. Rowe, and we're going to be discussing the book Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Shermain. I took Dana's workshop. It was amazing this past summer, and I'm thrilled that we're going to sit down and talk with him tomorrow. I also end every show by telling everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. Go to your Facebook friends list and reach out to the second person that pops up on your list and just give them a call. Not an email, not a text, a phone call, and let them know what they mean in your life. Now, Charlotte, I'm going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything that we've talked about today that you want to expound upon? Anything that we didn't talk about that you wish that we had, or any message that you just want to put out to everyone who's watching at this time. And again, I thank you for everything you've done for the Broadway community and beyond. And just keep on keeping on.
Thank you. Well, I guess what we didn't really talk about was safety and security. And I'd like to have every interview that I do make the point that we wish we were back yesterday, and we will be back strong, but we will not come back until we're assured that the cast, the crew, and the audience will be safe. So when we open, you need to know, the audience needs to know that we've done everything we know how to do with the best medical and professional experts and scientists out there to keep everybody safe. And we look forward to seeing the houses full again with those standing ovations that keep our cities running.
Thank you so much. Make it a great day, everybody, and an even greater tomorrow. Thank you, Charlotte.